Imagine waking up every morning in a golden palace, surrounded by unimaginable luxury, servants attending to your every need, draped in the finest linens Egypt can produce, but never knowing if you'll survive until the sun sets behind the pyramids. This was the reality for thousands of women who lived in the shadow of the pharaohs. Women whose stories have been buried deeper than any tomb, whose lives were more dangerous than any battlefield, and whose secrets could topple dynasties. Tonight, I'm going to take you behind the forbidden walls of the royal harem, into a world that was nothing like what Hollywood has shown you. Forget everything you think you know about Cleopatra's beauty rituals or the romantic tales of ancient queens. The truth is far more shocking and far more human. Before we descend into this labyrinth of gold and conspiracy, tell me, where are you listening to this story from? Are you comfortable in your bed, free to come and go as you please? Good. Hold on to that freedom. The women we're about to meet would have killed for it, and some of them actually did. If this journey into the forbidden corners of ancient Egypt intrigues you, make sure to subscribe. Trust me, by the end of this story, you'll never look at ancient Egyptian art the same way again. Those serene faces painted on tomb walls, they hide screams that echo through 3,000 years. What if I told you that one of Egypt's greatest pharaohs was murdered in his own bed, throat slit from ear to ear by a conspiracy that started in the perfumed chambers of his own harem? What if I revealed that the beautiful makeup worn by these women, that distinctive black coal that defined an entire civilization, was slowly poisoning them with every application? These aren't conspiracy theories whispered by grave robbers. These are facts, carved in stone, written in papyrus, and recently confirmed by CT scans of mummies who took their secrets to the afterlife. So settle in, pour yourself something strong if you have it. You're about to spend a day in the life of a pharaoh's concubine, and I promise you, not all of them survived to see another dawn. The sun hasn't yet blessed the land of Egypt with its presence, but in the sprawling complex known as the Jeneret house, hundreds of women are already stirring. No rooster announces the dawn here. Instead, it's the soft padding of servant feet and the distant chanting of priests that signals another day of gilded captivity has begun. Let me correct a misconception right away. This isn't a harem in the way you might imagine. The ancient Egyptians called it Ipet Nesut, the king's private quarters, or Per Jeneret, the house of the confined ones. That last translation should send a chill down your spine. The confined ones, not the beloved ones, not the chosen ones, the confined ones. Our concubine, let's call her Nefertiti, though that was certainly not her name, opens her eyes in the pre-dawn darkness. She shares her small chamber with 3 other women, all of lesser rank. The room is beautiful by any standard. Walls painted with scenes of the Nile, a small window letting in the cool morning air, beds with actual mattresses rather than simple mats. But golden cages are still cages. The hierarchy here is more rigid than the stones of the pyramids themselves. At the apex sits the great royal wife, who might not even live in this complex. She has her own palace, her own court, her own power. Below her, the secondary wives, some of them foreign princesses, sent as living peace treaties. Then come the royal ornaments, women of noble birth who've caught the pharaoh's eye. Our Nefertiti belongs to the next tier, the beauties of the palace, women chosen for their skills in music and dance, but who might also warm the royal bed if fortune or misfortune smiled upon them. At the bottom of this feminine pyramid are the servants, though even they live better than common Egyptians. But here's what the ancient texts don't tell you directly. Many of these servants were spies, reporting every whispered conversation, every sidelong glance, every sign of conspiracy or pregnancy. The morning purification ritual begins immediately. This isn't mere hygiene, it's a religious requirement. Every woman must be pure before she can enter the presence of the God King. They file to the bathing chambers, where water from the sacred Nile, transported daily in massive jars, awaits them. The water is cold, shocking them fully awake. They use natron salt to scrub their skin, the same substance that will one day preserve mummies. How's that for irony? Every morning, they wash with the chemicals of death. As Nefertiti cleanses herself, she can't help but notice the sideways glances, the whispered conversations that stop when she approaches. Last night, Iset from the musician's quarter was summoned to the pharaoh's chambers. She hasn't returned. Sometimes they come back glowing with pride, elevated in status, perhaps even pregnant with a royal child. Sometimes they simply disappear. The morning inspection is next. The overseer of the royal harem, a woman of immense power named Tuya, walks through the quarters like a general reviewing troops. Her eyes miss nothing. A woman who's gained weight, another whose skin shows signs of illness, a third whose eyes are red from crying. Any of these could mean dismissal or worse. But here's what makes this morning different, what adds electricity to the air that has nothing to do with the approaching storm season. Word has spread like oil on water. The pharaoh has been acting strangely. His food tasters have been doubled, his personal guard has been changed, and last week, a scribe was executed for reasons that were never made public. In this world of perfume and gold, every woman knows a fundamental truth. When the pharaoh feels threatened, the harem bleeds first. They are always the first suspects, the first to be questioned, the first to disappear into the desert night. As the sun finally breaks the horizon, painting the sky the color of papyrus, our Nefertiti prepares for another day of luxury and terror. She doesn't know it yet, but by nightfall, the Jeneret house will be minus one more soul. The only question is, will it be her? 2 hours. That's how long the beauty ritual takes every single morning. 2 hours that could mean the difference between life and death, between obscurity and becoming the mother of a future pharaoh. As Nefertiti sits before her bronze mirror, a luxury that cost more than a farmer's yearly income, she begins the intricate process of transformation. First comes the skin. The Egyptian sun is merciless, aging women before their time. But the concubines have access to secrets that won't be rediscovered for millennia. They start with exfoliation, using a mixture of Dead Sea salts and oils. Then comes the milk bath. Yes, the famous beauty treatment of Cleopatra was actually routine for royal women 1,000 years before she was born. But here's what the stories don't tell you. The milk often went sour in the heat, and bathing in it could cause infections that killed more surely than any assassin's blade. The face cream comes next, a mixture of honey, olive oil, and crushed pearls. The pearls, imported from the Red Sea, are supposed to give the skin a luminous quality. What they actually do is drain the treasury and create micro tears in the skin that can lead to scarring. Beauty has always demanded sacrifice, but in ancient Egypt, it could demand your life. Now comes the most dangerous part of the routine, the makeup. That iconic black kohl that rimmed the eyes of every Egyptian, from pharaoh to peasant, It was made from galena, a lead-based mineral. Every application poisoned them a little more. The symptoms of lead poisoning, headaches, abdominal pain, memory loss, mood swings, were so common among the nobility that they were considered normal aspects of a woman's nature. But they had no choice but to wear it. The coal wasn't just cosmetic, it was religious, medical, and social all at once. It protected the eyes from the sun's glare, was believed to ward off the evil eye, and marked one's social status by its quality and application. To appear without it would be like appearing naked, a sign of either poverty or insanity. The green eyeshadow, made from malachite, was equally toxic, containing copper that could cause liver damage over time. The red lip color? Sometimes it contained mercury. The rouge for the cheeks? Often made with toxic cinnabar. These women were literally painting themselves with poison every single day. As Nefertiti applies her makeup with a delicate ivory applicator carved with an image of Hathor, goddess of beauty and music, she notices her hands trembling slightly. Is it fear, or is it the accumulated poison in her system? In this world, it's impossible to tell where one ends and the other begins. The hair comes next. Most concubines shave their heads and wear elaborate wigs. This isn't just fashion. Head lice are rampant, and a shaved head is easier to keep clean. The wigs are works of art, made from human hair, bought from peasants, or taken from slaves. They're styled with beeswax and scented with myrrh and frankincense. On special occasions, they wear cones of perfumed fat on top of the wigs that slowly melt throughout the day, coating them in fragrance. But here's a secret the ancient texts only hint at. These wigs could be weapons. More than one rival had been poisoned by a gift of a beautiful wig, its strands soaked in toxic substances that would slowly seep through the scalp. Every gift in the harem was potentially lethal. The jewelry is the final touch. Gold and lapis lazuli, carnelian and turquoise, each piece carefully chosen not just for beauty, but for its magical properties. The Ankh for life, the Djed pillar for stability, the Eye of Horus for protection. They wear fortunes around their necks and wrists, but these treasures are also chains. Every piece is cataloged, and if a woman is dismissed from the harem, she leaves with nothing but the clothes on her back. As Nefertiti completes her transformation, she looks at her reflection. The woman staring back at her is unrecognizable, a living artwork, a goddess in miniature. But underneath the paint and gold, she knows the truth. She's slowly dying, one application at a time. Around her, dozens of other women undergo the same ritual. Some are young, perhaps 14 or 15, their skin still unmarked by the years of toxic cosmetics. Others are older, their hands shaking from neurological damage, their memories fading, their tempers increasingly erratic. The physicians blame it on the female constitution. The women know better, but knowledge without power is just another form of torture. The overseer claps her hands. The morning beautification is complete. It's time for the next phase of their daily performance, and performance is the right word. Every moment in the harem is a carefully choreographed dance, and one wrong step could be fatal. As they file out of the preparation chambers, Nefertiti catches a glimpse of something that makes her blood run cold. In the corner, barely visible, servants are packing up the cosmetics and belongings of Iset, the musician who was summoned last night. Her makeup pots are being sealed, her jewelry boxed. She's not coming back. But there's no time to mourn or even to wonder. The day has only just begun, and already the harem has claimed another victim. The only question now is, who's next? Most people believe the harem was simply a pleasure palace, a golden cage filled with beautiful birds, singing only for the pharaoh's amusement. They couldn't be more wrong. The greatest secret of the Jeneret house was this: it was a school, and the concubines were the teachers of future kings. In a chamber separate from the main quarters, Nefertiti takes her position among the other beauties of the palace. But they're not here to dance or sing, not yet. They're here for their most important duty, one that history has almost forgotten: educating the royal children. The princes and princesses of Egypt didn't learn from dusty old scribes in temple schools. Their first teachers were these women, concubines, secondary wives, and especially the wet nurses, who held more power than many nobles. Think about that for a moment. The future pharaohs of Egypt, the god kings who would rule the known world, learned their first words, their first songs, their first understanding of power from women who were essentially prisoners. Today's lesson is for Prince Amenhotep, age 7, son of a secondary wife from Nubia. He might never rule, he's fifth in line for the throne, but in this world of poisonings and accidents, being fifth today could mean being first tomorrow. The boy enters with the swagger of divinity, already convinced of his godhood, but in the eyes of his teachers, he's just another child who needs to learn. Nefertiti teaches him music, but hidden in the songs are lessons far more valuable. The hymn to Ra contains the names of every nome in Egypt, geography disguised as worship. The praise of Thoth includes the principles of mathematics. The story of Osiris and Set is really about succession, betrayal, and the price of power. These women are creating the minds that will shape Egypt's future, and they know it. But here's what's truly fascinating. The wet nurses, those women who breastfed the royal children, held positions of incredible influence. In Egyptian belief, the milk created a permanent bond, making the nurse a second mother. Some of these women were honored with tombs in the Valley of the Kings. Others became the power behind the throne, whispering in the ears of pharaohs who trusted them more than their own mothers. Take the story of Sitra-In, wet nurse to Queen Hatshepsut. When Hatshepsut became pharaoh, yes, a female pharaoh who ruled for 22 successful years, Sitra-In was elevated to a position of such prominence that she was depicted in statuary, an honor usually reserved for royalty. The woman who had nursed her at her breast became one of the most powerful figures in Egypt. But with great power comes great danger. The royal children were targets from birth. Every meal they ate could be poisoned. Every toy they played with could be cursed. And their teachers and nurses, they were the first line of defense and the first to be suspected if anything went wrong. Nefertiti remembers the fate of Jeneret, a concubine who had taught Prince Pentawere. When the prince was implicated in a conspiracy to murder his father, Ramesses III, Jeneret was tortured for information she probably didn't have. They broke her fingers one by one, the same fingers that had taught the prince to write. She died proclaiming her innocence, but in the harem, innocence is just another word for naivety. The children themselves were weapons in the endless war for succession. A concubine who bore a son immediately rose in status, but she also painted a target on her back. Every other woman with a son became her enemy. The children grew up in an atmosphere of paranoia and competition, learning to trust no one, not even their own mothers. During today's lesson, Prince Amenhotep asks an innocent question: why does my mother cry at night? The room falls silent. His mother is Takat, a Mitanni princess sent as a living peace treaty. She hasn't seen her homeland in 10 years and never will again. She cries for a life stolen, a family lost, a son who will grow up Egyptian rather than Mitanni. Nefertiti carefully redirects the conversation, but the damage is done. Children's innocent words could start investigations, could reveal conspiracies, could doom their own mothers. Every word spoken in these teaching chambers is noted by scribes hidden behind painted screens. As the lesson ends, the prince is led away by guards, but not before he turns to Nefertiti and says something that chills her to the bone. "My mother says you're pretty." She says father might choose you next. The child doesn't understand the weight of his words, doesn't know he's just signed either her elevation or her death warrant. The other women exchange glances. To be chosen could mean becoming a secondary wife, bearing royal children, achieving a kind of immortality, or it could mean becoming a threat to the existing wives, a target for their jealousy and their poisons. In the harem, blessings and curses are often the same thing, just viewed from different angles. As the teaching chamber empties, Nefertiti notices something troubling. The scribe who usually records the lessons is new. The previous one, a man who'd held the position for 15 years, is nowhere to be seen. In the harem, people don't retire, they simply cease to exist. The morning's education is over, but the real lesson is just beginning. In this place, knowledge isn't just power, it's a weapon that cuts both ways. And Nefertiti has just learned that she might be holding the blade by the wrong end. The afternoon sun beats down mercilessly as Nefertiti and 20 other women gather in the practice hall. Their bodies are already slick with sweat from the morning's activities, but there's no rest in the Jeneret house. Now comes the time for what outsiders think is their primary purpose: entertainment. But if you think this is about pleasure, you haven't been paying attention. This is about survival, spirituality, and espionage, all wrapped in silk and rhythm. The Kaner, the official troupe of musicians and dancers, isn't just a performance group. They're a religious order, a diplomatic corps, and sometimes an intelligence network. Today, they're preparing for the Festival of Opet, one of the most important celebrations in the Egyptian calendar. The pharaoh will parade the statue of Amun from Karnak to Luxor, and the Kaner will dance the entire route, nearly 2 miles in the blazing Sunday. The dance mistress, a woman named Henetawi who survived 3 pharaohs and countless conspiracies, claps her hands. Her body bears the scars of 40 years of dancing, twisted toes, damaged knees, a back permanently bent from the contortions required by the sacred dances. She's living proof that even if you survive the politics of the harem, the art itself will eventually destroy you. The dance they're practicing isn't the sensual writhing that later centuries would associate with harem dancers. This is athletic, acrobatic, almost violent in its intensity. They leap and spin, their bodies bending in ways that seem to defy anatomy. Some dancers dislocate their joints deliberately, creating movements that appear supernatural. The goddess Hathor demands nothing less than the impossible. But here's what makes this rehearsal different. Among them are 3 new dancers, recently arrived from Nubia. Officially, they're gifts from an allied kingdom. Unofficially, everyone knows they're spies. The question isn't whether they're gathering intelligence, of course they are, but for whom? Their homeland? Another wife? Perhaps even a faction planning rebellion? Nefertiti watches them carefully as she dances. One of them, a girl who can't be more than 16, has the telltale marks of scarification on her shoulders. She's from a warrior tribe. Another moves with a precision that speaks of military training. The third, despite her youth, has eyes that have seen too much. These aren't just dancers, they're weapons wrapped in beauty. The musicians provide the soundtrack to this dangerous ballet. The sistrum rattles like bone against bone. The drums beat like war signals. The flutes wail like the laments of the dead. Every performance is both a celebration of life and a reminder of death. In Egypt, the two are never far apart. During a break for water, even dancers can die of heat stroke. Henetawi pulls Nefertiti aside. "You've been noticed," she says quietly, her voice barely audible over the general chatter. "The overseer has marked you for special performance. Tomorrow, private audience." Nefertiti's heart sinks. Private performances could mean anything. Sometimes it's just dancing for the pharaoh and his inner circle. Sometimes it's more. And sometimes dancers who go to private performances don't come back. They're found floating in the Nile days later, their bodies bearing no marks of violence. Natural causes, the officials always say, as if anything in the harem is natural. The rehearsal resumes, but now there's a desperate edge to Nefertiti's movements. If tomorrow might be her last day, then today's dance could be her final statement. She throws herself into the routine with an intensity that draws stares. Her leaps are higher, her spins faster, her contortions more extreme. She's dancing like her life depends on it, because it very well might. Then disaster strikes. During a particularly complex sequence where the dancers form a human pyramid, one of the Nubian girls accidentally causes a collapse. Bodies tumble, limbs tangle, and in the chaos, Nefertiti feels a sharp pain in her ankle. When the dust settles, she can barely stand. Henetawi examines the injury with the practiced eye of someone who's seen every possible dance-related trauma. "Sprained," she declares, "but you'll dance tomorrow if I have to carry you myself. The pharaoh has requested you specifically." The pharaoh, not the overseer, not a wife, the pharaoh himself. The other dancers look at Nefertiti with a mixture of envy and pity. To be noticed by the pharaoh is the highest honor and the greatest danger. Some women become great royal wives from such attention. Others simply disappear, their names erased from history as if they never existed. As the rehearsal ends and the dancers disperse, the Nubian girl who caused the accident brushes past Nefertiti. "Be careful tomorrow," she whispers in accented Egyptian. "The scorpion strikes when the moon is dark." Is it a warning? A threat? In the harem, they're often the same thing. That night, Nefertiti can barely sleep. Her ankle throbs, but that's nothing compared to the fear coursing through her veins. Tomorrow, she'll dance before the God King himself. It could be her moment of triumph or her last performance ever. But there's something else keeping her awake, something she overheard during the rehearsal. Two of the musicians were whispering about strange shipments arriving at the palace, boxes of scrolls marked with the seal of the high priest of Amun. The priests in the pharaoh have been at odds lately over tax revenues from the temples. If the priests are planning something, no. Such thoughts are treasonous. In the harem, even thinking about conspiracy can get you killed. But as Nefertiti finally drifts off to sleep, she can't shake the feeling that tomorrow's private performance will be about more than just dancing. The stage is being set for something terrible, and she's about to dance right into the middle of it. The morning after Nefertiti's injury, the harem wakes to screaming, not the usual sounds of morning preparation, but genuine terror. In the quarters of the secondary wives, Takat, the Mitanni princess and mother of Prince Amenhotep, has been found dead in her bed. Her lips are blue, her body rigid, her eyes frozen open in an expression of absolute horror. Poison. Everyone knows it, though no one dares say it aloud. The overseer, Tuya, arrives within minutes, followed by the royal physician and a scribe to record everything. The other wives cluster in doorways, their faces carefully composed into expressions of shock and sorrow, but Nefertiti sees the calculating looks, the barely suppressed satisfaction on some faces. Takat had been rising in favor lately. Her son was strong and intelligent. She'd been a threat. This is the dark reality of the harem that no amount of gold or perfume can mask. When you gather dozens of women, all competing for the attention of one man, when you make their children's futures dependent on eliminating rivals, when you create a system where there can only be one winner, you create a breeding ground for murder. The physician examines the body with practiced efficiency. He's seen this before, too many times. Natural causes, he announces loudly. Her heart gave out in the night. The foreign women often have weak constitutions, unable to handle our Egyptian climate. It's a lie so transparent that even the children wouldn't believe it, but it's the official truth now. To question it would be to accuse someone of murder, and accusations in the harem have a way of bouncing back on the accuser. As servants prepare the body for mummification, even murdered concubines receive proper burial rites. Nefertiti notices something others miss. A small red mark on Takat's neck, barely visible beneath her hair. A needle mark. Someone had injected her with something, probably while she slept. The poison would have paralyzed her first, leaving her unable to scream, then slowly shut down her organs while she remained conscious. She would have died aware, but unable to move, unable to call for help, unable to even close her eyes. But who? The list of suspects is as long as the Nile. There's Isis Nofret, the pharaoh's current favorite, who saw Takat as competition. There's Bent Anat, an Egyptian noble's daughter who openly despised foreign women in the harem. There's even Queen Tiye herself, the great royal wife, who might have acted to protect her own son's claim to the throne. Here's what outsiders don't understand about these rivalries. They weren't just about jealousy or petty squabbles. These women were fighting for their survival and their children's futures. In ancient Egypt, when a new pharaoh took the throne, he often eliminated potential rivals, including his own half-brothers. A concubine's son who didn't become pharaoh might be executed, castrated, or if he was lucky, merely exiled. The stakes couldn't be higher. The methods of elimination were as varied as they were creative. Poison was popular, slipped into food, cosmetics, or even clothing. Some women employed magic, using curse tablets and wax figures to bring misfortune on their rivals. Others were more direct, arranging accidents during dance rehearsals or bath times. The pool in the harem claimed at least 3 lives a year, always ruled as drownings despite the fact that all the victims were excellent swimmers. But the most insidious weapon in the harem was information. Knowledge of an affair, an overheard treasonous comment, evidence of witchcraft. These could destroy a rival more thoroughly than any poison. The harem was full of spies, some working for the overseer, others for various wives, some even for external forces like the priests of Amun or foreign kingdoms. Nefertiti herself has been approached multiple times to serve as an informant. The offers are always veiled, always deniable. If you should happen to hear anything interesting during your duties, your loyalty would not go unrewarded. She's refused them all, knowing that spies in the harem have even shorter lifespans than dancers. As Taket's body is carried away, her son, Prince Amenhotep, appears in the courtyard. 7 years old and now motherless, he looks lost, confused. The other wives eye him speculatively. A motherless prince is vulnerable, but also an opportunity. Whoever becomes his new protector could position their own sons favorably. The boy is now a prize to be won, and his mother's body isn't even cold yet. This is the moment when Queen Tiye makes her entrance. The great royal wife rarely visits the common quarters of the harem, preferring her own palace, but death brings her like a vulture to carrion. She's a woman of 50, still beautiful, but with eyes like flint. She's survived 30 years in this world, outlived 2 other great royal wives, and seen dozens of rivals fall. Such a tragedy, she says, her voice carrying across the courtyard. The foreign women often struggle with our food. Perhaps she ate something that disagreed with her. It's a masterclass in threat, disguised as sympathy. She's simultaneously claiming credit for the murder and warning others that the same fate awaits those who challenge her. But then something unexpected happens. The young Prince Amenhotep walks up to Queen Tiye and says, in his clear child's voice, "My mother said you were going to kill her. She made me memorize a letter to send to her father if anything happened. I already sent it." The courtyard goes deathly silent. The child has just accused the great royal wife of murder and claimed to have informed a foreign king. If true, this could mean war. If false, the boy has just signed his own death warrant. Queen Tiye's composure never cracks. She smiles, an expression as warm as the desert wind. Poor child, grief makes us say strange things. He needs rest and care. I'll personally ensure he receives both. Everyone understands. The boy will be dead within a week, another victim of natural causes, or perhaps a tragic accident. The letter, if it exists, will never reach its destination. The Mitanni princess will be forgotten, her name erased from records, her son joining her in whatever afterlife awaits murdered children. This is the truth of the harem that no romantic story ever tells. It wasn't a paradise of beauty and pleasure. It was a battlefield where the weapons were smiles and silk, where children were pawns and mothers were players, in a game where losing meant death. As the crowd disperses, Nefertiti prepares for her private performance that evening, but now she understands. She's not just dancing for the pharaoh's pleasure, she's dancing for her life, performing on a stage where one wrong move, one perceived slight, one moment of disfavor could see her joining Taket in the house of the dead. The most terrifying part? This is considered a good day in the harem. After all, only one person died. As the sun reaches its zenith, Nefertiti finds herself in a part of the harem she rarely visits, the quarters of the foreign wives. These women, princesses and noblewomen from Mitanni, Babylon, Nubia, and beyond, live in a strange limbo, neither fully Egyptian nor able to remain who they once were. She's been sent here by the overseer to teach a new arrival the basics of Egyptian dance. The woman, barely more than a girl, is Princess Gilukhepa of Mitanni, arrived just 3 days ago with a dowry of gold that took 50 donkeys to carry. She sits in her chamber, still wearing the elaborate robes of her homeland, looking like a bird that's forgotten it's been caged. "I am a princess," Gilukhepa says in heavily accented Egyptian when Nefertiti tries to explain the dance movements. "In my country, princesses do not dance like servants." Nefertiti wants to tell her the truth, that in Egypt, she's not a princess anymore. She's a political symbol, a living treaty, a commodity, But kindness sometimes means allowing someone their illusions a little longer. The foreign quarters tell 1,000 stories of heartbreak. These women were sent by their fathers and brothers as gifts, as peace offerings, as bribes. They left their homes with great ceremony, probably believing they were going to be queens. The reality is so much crueler. Most foreign princesses never even meet the pharaoh they're supposedly married to. They're married by proxy, in ceremonies where the pharaoh is represented by a statue or an official. They're given Egyptian names they can barely pronounce, dressed in Egyptian clothes that feel strange against their skin, taught Egyptian prayers to gods they don't believe in. Princess Tadokepa from Babylon has been here 12 years. She was 14 when she arrived. The pharaoh has never summoned her, not once. She spends her days writing letters home that are never sent, speaking to servants in a language they don't understand, slowly forgetting the sound of her mother's voice. Do you know what the worst part is? Tadokepa tells Nefertiti during a break in the dance lesson, "It's not the loneliness or the boredom. It's knowing that my father thinks I'm living as a queen. He probably boasts about his daughter, the wife of the pharaoh, if he knew I was just another forgotten woman in a house full of forgotten women." Some foreign wives adapt better than others. Maya Thorneferuer, a Hittite princess, has embraced Egyptian culture completely. She's learned perfect Egyptian, worships Egyptian gods, and has even borne the pharaoh 2 children, though neither will ever be in line for the throne. She's created a new identity for herself, but at what cost? When her elderly father sent ambassadors to see her, she refused to meet them. "I am Egyptian now," she said. But Nefertiti has heard her crying at night, calling out in Hittite for her mother. The cruelest fate belongs to those from enemy kingdoms. When relationships sour, these women become hostages. Princess Ankhesenamun of Libya has been confined to her quarters for 3 months, ever since her brother led a raid on Egypt's western border. She's done nothing wrong, but she's being punished for the sins of her family. Her food rations have been cut, her servants reduced. She's slowly starving, a political statement written in flesh and bone. But here's the secret that makes this even more tragic. Many of these marriages were never consummated. The pharaoh might have 300 wives, but he's still just one man. These women are married virgins, bound to a husband who doesn't know they exist, unable to return home because that would break the alliance, unable to find love because they're technically married. Some find comfort with each other. The foreign quarters are full of whispered relationships, women from different kingdoms finding solace in shared loneliness. But even this is dangerous. If discovered, the punishment is severe. Last year, a Babylonian princess was caught with a Nubian princess. Both were sealed alive in a tomb, their crime being that they sought human connection in a world that denied them even that. The children of foreign wives face their own challenges. They're raised Egyptian, but never fully accepted as Egyptian. They're royal, but never quite royal enough. Prince Thutmose, son of a Syrian princess, is brilliant. He speaks 6 languages and has memorized every religious text, but he'll never be more than a priest because his mother's blood makes him unsuitable for the throne. As Nefertiti continues teaching Gilukepa, she notices the girls' dowry boxes stacked in the corner. One is already open, revealing elaborate jewelry that will soon be cataloged and absorbed into the royal treasury. The princess will never see most of it again. It's not really her dowry, it's Egypt's payment for taking her off her father's hands. "Will I at least have my own household?" Gilukepa asks hopefully. In Mitanni, Royal wives have their own estates. Nefertiti chooses her words carefully. You'll have quarters here, in the Jeneret house. You'll have servants. You'll want for nothing, except freedom, except home, except love, except purpose. But she doesn't say these things. The truth is that foreign princesses are trophies, collected like the exotic animals in the Pharaoh's menagerie. They're living proof of Egypt's dominance, breathing symbols of other kingdoms' submission. Their presence says, "Look how powerful Egypt is. Other nations send us their daughters as tribute." But occasionally, very occasionally, a foreign wife beats the odds. Queen Tiye herself, the current great royal wife, had a foreign grandmother. Nefertiti has heard whispers that the next pharaoh might take a foreign princess as his great royal wife, breaking centuries of tradition. It's unlikely, but in the harem, even impossible hopes are better than no hope at all. As the dance lesson ends, Gilukepa grasps Nefertiti's hand. "Tell me truthfully," she whispers, "will I ever go home?" Nefertiti looks into those young, desperate eyes and makes a choice. Sometimes mercy means telling the truth. "No," she says simply. "This is your home now. The sooner you accept that, the easier it will be." The princess begins to cry, but they're the tears of someone who's finally allowed to grieve. The false hope was killing her slowly. The truth, harsh as it is, at least allows her to begin adapting to her new reality. As Nefertiti leaves the foreign quarters, she passes a scribe making his daily count. He's tallying the foreign wives like inventory: 17 Mitanni, 12 Babylonian, 8 Nubian, 6 Libyan, 4 Syrian. They're not even names to him, just numbers, quantities of diplomatic capital stored in the royal warehouse. This is perhaps the greatest tragedy of the foreign wives. They're not even important enough to be considered threats. The Egyptian wives scheme and poison each other because they have a chance at power. The foreign wives are simply forgotten, left to wither away in their golden cage, their only crime being born in the wrong kingdom to the wrong king who thought his daughter's happiness was worth less than a peace treaty. But as Nefertiti returns to her own quarters to prepare for tonight's private performance, she carries with her a chilling realization. If foreign princesses, women born to power and privilege, can be discarded so easily, what chance does she have? She's not even nobility, just a common Egyptian girl chosen for her beauty and her ability to dance. Tonight, she'll perform for the pharaoh. Tomorrow, if she's unlucky, she could join the forgotten women of the foreign quarters. Or worse, she could join Takat in the house of the dead. The sun is beginning its descent toward the western hills. In a few hours, Nefertiti will dance before the god king. But first, she must prepare, and preparation in the harem means more than just practicing steps. It means choosing the right costume to be alluring, but not too provocative, the right jewelry to show respect, but not ambition, the right perfume to be noticed, but not remembered. Every choice could be her last. The sun dies in a blaze of red and gold over the western desert, and the Jeneret house transforms. During the day, it's a place of rigid routine and careful choreography. But at night, it becomes something else entirely, a maze of whispers, shadows, and secrets. Nefertiti stands in her chamber, dressed for her performance. Her injured ankle is wrapped tightly with linen soaked in willow bark extract, nature's painkiller, though it only dulls the edge of agony. She wears a dress of the finest linen, so sheer it's almost transparent, held at the shoulder by a single golden clasp. Her wig is perfumed with myrrh, her skin gleams with sacred oils, and around her neck hangs a single piece of jewelry, an ankh of pure gold, a gift from the overseer that might be blessing or curse. Around her, the harem settles into its evening rhythm. In the quarters of the secondary wives, small dinner parties are being held. These gatherings are supposedly social, but they're really intelligence-gathering operations. Who's been summoned lately? Who's showing signs of pregnancy? Who's fallen from favor? Information is currency here, and everyone's constantly trading. In the musicians' quarters, instruments are being tuned for the various entertainments happening throughout the palace complex. Some women will perform at the royal banquet, others will play in the temples for the evening prayers. The unlucky ones will entertain minor officials and visiting dignitaries, men who think that because these women are mere entertainers, they can take liberties. More than one musician has returned from such assignments with bruises hidden beneath her dress, but the largest group of women are those waiting in their chambers, dressed and perfumed, hoping tonight will be their night. They've been here for years, some of them, waiting for a summons that never comes. They go through the same routine every evening: the bath, the makeup, the careful draping of their best dress. They sit by their doors, listening for footsteps, jumping at every sound. Merida Munn has been waiting 7 years. She was 15 when she entered the harem, chosen for her extraordinary beauty. Now she's 22, and the bloom of youth is fading. She's never been summoned, not once. Every night she prepares, and every morning she washes off the unused makeup, her eyes a little deader than the day before. "Do you know what the cruelest part is?" she tells Nefertiti as they pass in the corridor. "It's the hope. Every night, I think tonight might be different, but it never is. I'm like a farmer praying for rain in the desert. At some point, you have to accept the gods have abandoned you." These forgotten women develop their own rituals to pass the time. Some turn to religion, becoming devotees of Hathor or Isis, spending their nights in prayer and meditation. Others pursue education, learning to read and write, studying mathematics and astronomy. A few turn to less wholesome pursuits. Lotus wine and poppy extract are always available for those who prefer oblivion to awareness. But tonight feels different. There's an electricity in the air that has nothing to do with the approaching storm season. Guards have been doubled at all entrances. The food tasters are working overtime, and there's a rumor spreading like wildfire through the quarters. The high priest of Amun was seen entering the palace at sunset with a contingent of temple guards. The relationship between the pharaoh and the priests has been strained lately. The temples control vast wealth, sometimes more than the royal treasury. They have their own armies, their own spies, their own agendas. When priests visit the palace at night, it's rarely for prayer. As Nefertiti makes her way to the pharaoh's private chambers, she passes through the Hall of Columns, where the walls are covered with scenes of pharaonic victories. But she knows the truth behind these glorious images. That great battle against the Nubians, Egypt barely survived it. That triumphant return with tribute, half the army died in the desert. The walls lie as smoothly as everyone in the palace. She's stopped 3 times by guards checking her permission scroll. Each examination is thorough, almost invasive. They're looking for concealed weapons, poisons, magical amulets. One guard makes her remove her wig to check for hidden compartments. Another examines her ankh, testing it with a special stone that changes color in the presence of certain poisons. Finally, she reaches the antechamber to the pharaoh's private quarters. Here she finds something unexpected. She's not alone. 2 other dancers are waiting, both from the canner, and in the corner, barely visible in the shadows, stands the high priest of Amun himself. This isn't a private performance. This is something else entirely. The overseer appears, her face unreadable. "There's been a change of plans," she announces. "You'll be performing together, a special dance, one that hasn't been performed in many years." Nefertiti's blood runs cold. She knows what dance they mean. The Dance of the Seven Veils, a ritual performance that's part entertainment, part religious ceremony, and part something else. Legend says that those who perform it perfectly are granted a wish by the gods, but legend also says that those who fail are cursed. The other two dancers look equally concerned. One of them is Setnat, the one who disappeared. Another, with the same common name, whispers, "My grandmother performed this dance once. She said it opened doorways that should remain closed. She never danced again." But they have no choice. To refuse would be treason. And so, as the moon rises full and bright over the palace, 3 women prepare to dance for more than just the pharaoh's entertainment. They're about to become part of something ancient and dangerous, something that will determine not just their fates, but possibly the fate of Egypt itself. The guards open the doors to the pharaoh's chamber, and Nefertiti glimpses inside. The pharaoh sits on his throne, but he's not alone. Beside him stands Queen Tiye, and her expression is one of triumph. Behind them, arranged like pieces on a senate board, are the highest officials of the kingdom. This isn't entertainment. This is a trial, and the dancers are either witnesses or defendants. Nefertiti isn't sure which. As she steps into the chamber, her ankles screaming in protest, she realizes that everything that's happened today, Tekat's murder, the foreign princess's arrival, the rumors of conspiracy, has been leading to this moment. The music begins, a haunting melody played on instruments that sound older than the pyramids themselves. And Nefertiti begins to dance, knowing that by dawn, the harem will have lost more than just one forgotten musician. The revolution has begun, and she's dancing at its center. The sun dies in a blaze of red and gold over the western desert, and the Jeneret house transforms. During the day, it's a place of rigid routine and careful choreography. But at night, it becomes something else entirely, a maze of whispers, shadows, and secrets. Nefertiti stands in her chamber, dressed for her performance. Her injured ankle is wrapped tightly with linen soaked in willow bark extract, nature's painkiller, though it only dulls the edge of agony. She wears a dress of the finest linen, so sheer it's almost transparent, held at the shoulder by a single golden clasp. Her wig is perfumed with myrrh, her skin gleams with sacred oils, and around her neck hangs a single piece of jewelry, an ankh of pure gold, a gift from the overseer that might be blessing or curse. Around her, the harem settles into its evening rhythm. In the quarters of the secondary wives, small dinner parties are being held. These gatherings are supposedly social, but they're really intelligence-gathering operations. Who's been summoned lately? Who's showing signs of pregnancy? Who's fallen from favor? Information is currency here, and everyone's constantly trading. In the musicians' quarters, instruments are being tuned for the various entertainments happening throughout the palace complex. Some women will perform at the royal banquet. Others will play in the temples for the evening prayers. The unlucky ones will entertain minor officials and visiting dignitaries, men who think that because these women are mere entertainers, they can take liberties. More than one musician has returned from such assignments, with bruises hidden beneath her dress. But the largest group of women are those waiting in their chambers, dressed and perfumed, hoping tonight will be their night. They've been here for years, some of them, waiting for a summons that never comes. They go through the same routine every evening: the bath, the makeup, the careful draping of their best dress. They sit by their doors, listening for footsteps, jumping at every sound. Merit Amun has been waiting 7 years. She was 15 when she entered the harem, chosen for her extraordinary beauty. Now she's 22, and the bloom of youth is fading. She's never been summoned, not once. Every night she prepares, and every morning she washes off the unused makeup, her eyes a little deader than the day before. Do you know what the cruelest part is? She tells Nefertiti as they pass in the corridor. It's the hope. Every night, I think tonight might be different, but it never is. I'm like a farmer praying for rain in the desert. At some point, you have to accept the gods have abandoned you. These forgotten women develop their own rituals to pass the time. Some turn to religion, becoming devotees of Hathor or Isis, spending their nights in prayer and meditation. Others pursue education, learning to read and write, studying mathematics and astronomy. A few turn to less wholesome pursuits. Lotus wine and poppy extract are always available for those who prefer oblivion to awareness. But tonight feels different. There's an electricity in the air that has nothing to do with the approaching storm season. Guards have been doubled at all entrances. The food tasters are working overtime, and there's a rumor spreading like wildfire through the quarters. The high priest of Amun was seen entering the palace at sunset with a contingent of temple guards. The relationship between the pharaoh and the priests has been strained lately. The temples control vast wealth, sometimes more than the royal treasury. They have their own armies, their own spies, their own agendas. When priests visit the palace at night, it's rarely for prayer. As Nefertiti makes her way to the pharaoh's private chambers, she passes through the Hall of Columns, where the walls are covered with scenes of pharaonic victories. But she knows the truth behind these glorious images. That great battle against the Nubians, Egypt barely survived it. That triumphant return with tribute, half the army died in the desert. The walls lie as smoothly as everyone in the palace. She's stopped 3 times by guards checking her permission scroll. Each examination is thorough, almost invasive. They're looking for concealed weapons, poisons, magical amulets. One guard makes her remove her wig to check for hidden compartments. Another examines her ankh, testing it with a special stone that changes color in the presence of certain poisons. Finally, she reaches the antechamber to the pharaoh's private quarters. Here she finds something unexpected. She's not alone. 2 other dancers are waiting, both from the Canaan. And in the corner, barely visible in the shadows, stands the high priest of Amun himself. This isn't a private performance. This is something else entirely. The overseer appears, her face unreadable. There's been a change of plans. She announces, "You'll be performing together, a special dance, one that hasn't been performed in many years." Nefertiti's blood runs cold. She knows what dance they mean. The dance of the 7 veils, a ritual performance that's part entertainment, part religious ceremony, and part something else. Legend says that those who perform it perfectly are granted a wish by the gods. But legend also says that those who fail are cursed. The other 2 dancers look equally concerned. One of them, Iset, not the one who disappeared, another with the same common name, whispers, "My grandmother performed this dance once. She said it opened doorways that should remain closed. She never danced again." But they have no choice. To refuse would be treason. And so, as the moon rises full and bright over the palace, 3 women prepare to dance for more than just the pharaoh's entertainment. They're about to become part of something ancient and dangerous, something that will determine not just their fates, but possibly the fate of Egypt itself. The guards open the doors to the pharaoh's chamber, and Nefertiti glimpses inside. The pharaoh sits on his throne, but he's not alone. Beside him stands Queen Tiye, and her expression is one of triumph. Behind them, arranged like pieces on a senate board, are the highest officials of the kingdom. This isn't entertainment. This is a trial, and the dancers are either witnesses or defendants. Nefertiti isn't sure which. As she steps into the chamber, her ankles screaming in protest, she realizes that everything that's happened today, Takat's murder, the foreign princess's arrival, the rumors of conspiracy, has been leading to this moment. The music begins, a haunting melody played on instruments that sound older than the pyramids themselves. And Nefertiti begins to dance, knowing that by dawn, the harem will have lost more than just one forgotten musician. The revolution has begun, and she's dancing at its center. The dance of the seven veils is unlike any performance Nefertiti has ever given. Each veil represents one of the seven gates of the underworld, and as the dancers remove them, they're symbolically descending into the realm of the dead. But tonight, the symbolism feels all too real. As they dance, the high priest of Amun speaks, his voice cutting through the hypnotic music like a blade through silk. Great Pharaoh, living Horus, Lord of the two lands, he begins, and everyone can hear the mockery in his formal address. We come before you tonight with evidence of treason most foul. The Pharaoh Ramesses III, for that's who sits on the throne, the last great warrior pharaoh of Egypt, remains impassive. But Nefertiti, spinning in her prescribed movements, sees his hand tighten on his ceremonial flail. He knows what's coming. Your secondary wife, Tiye, the priest continues, and not Queen Tiye, but another woman with the same name, steps forward from the shadows, has conspired with members of your own household to end your divine life. The dance must continue. To stop would be sacrilege, so Nefertiti and the others keep moving, their bodies telling the story of descent into darkness, while around them, a real-life conspiracy unfolds. Secondary wife Tiye, not to be confused with the great royal wife, is a woman of perhaps 35, still beautiful, but with desperation etched in every line of her face. Her son, Pentawere, stands beside her. He's 20, handsome, ambitious, and about to be revealed as a would-be patricide. Lies, Tiye shouts, but her voice shakes. The priests seek to divide the royal household. The high priest produces a papyrus scroll. We have written testimony from Pabekamen, chief of the chamber. Shall I read his confession? As he reads, the full scope of the conspiracy becomes clear. It wasn't just about killing the pharaoh, it was about overthrowing the entire succession. Tiye had recruited dozens of conspirators, palace officials, military commanders, even members of the royal guard. They'd planned to murder Ramesses III during the Opet festival, when the palace would be in chaos, when a death might look like an accident or an assassination by foreign agents. But here's the detail that makes Nefertiti's blood run cold. The conspirators had used magic. They'd created wax figures of the pharaoh and his loyalists, performed forbidden rituals, summoned dark forces that should never be awakened. In the highly superstitious world of ancient Egypt, this isn't just treason, it's an assault on the very fabric of reality. The dance continues, faster now, more frantic. Nefertiti removes the fourth veil, representing the gate where the heart is weighed against the feather of Ma'at. How appropriate. When everyone in this room is being judged, we have more evidence, the high priest continues. He gestures, and guards bring in a box. Inside are the wax figures, grotesque parodies of the royal family, each one pierced with needles, some melted partially, their faces twisted in agony. Queen Tiye, the great royal wife, finally speaks. "So this is why my joints have been aching. This is why my husband has been suffering headaches. You tried to kill us with magic." The secondary wife Tiye's composure finally cracks. "You have everything." She screams at the queen, "Your son will be Pharaoh. What about my son? What about Pentawere? He's royal blood too. Why should he live in shadows while your boy sits on the throne?" And there it is, the eternal tragedy of the harem. Too many royal children, only one throne. The system itself creates conspirators. The pharaoh rises, and everyone except the dancers falls to their knees. Even in the middle of revealing his would-be assassins, protocol must be maintained. "You used my own harem against me," he says, his voice surprisingly calm. "My own women, my own children." He turns to the high priest. "How many?" 38 conspirators so far, Divine One. We're still investigating." 38. The number hits the room like a physical blow. That's not a conspiracy, that's a revolution. The dance reaches its climax. The seventh veil falls, and the dancers stand nearly naked before the assembly, representing souls bare before the gods. But Nefertiti barely notices her exposure. She's too focused on what happens next. The pharaoh walks to his secondary wife, Tiye. For a moment, tenderness flickers across his face. "I remember when you came to the palace," he says softly. "You were 15, beautiful as the dawn. You gave me a son. I gave you everything except what you truly wanted, power. I wanted my son to matter," she replies, tears streaming down her face. "Is that so wrong?" "Yes," the pharaoh says simply, "when it means killing his father. The judgment comes swift and terrible. The conspirators will be tried, but the outcome is predetermined. The lucky ones will be allowed to commit suicide. The unlucky ones will be burned alive, the ultimate punishment, as it destroys the body needed for the afterlife. Pentawere, the would-be patricide, will be given poison and told to drink it himself." But the pharaoh isn't finished. "The harem system itself is diseased," he announces. "Too many women, too many children, too many opportunities for conspiracy. Things will change." And they do. In the coming weeks, the harem is purged, not just the conspirators, but anyone even peripherally connected to them. Servants, dancers, musicians, anyone who might have known and didn't report it. The Jeneret house, once home to hundreds, is reduced to barely 50. Nefertiti survives, barely. Her performance during the judgment, maintaining the sacred dance even as horror unfolded around her, has been noted. She's given a choice: become a priestess of Hathor and leave the palace forever, or remain and serve the new order. She chooses the temple. After what she's witnessed, the celibate life of a priestess seems like paradise compared to the deadly garden of the harem. But the story doesn't end there. 2 months after the conspiracy is revealed, Pharaoh Ramesses III is found dead in his bed. The official cause is natural death, but when his mummy is examined thousands of years later with modern technology, the truth is revealed. His throat was slit from ear to ear, cut so deep it nearly severed his spine. The conspiracy had a second layer, one that even the high priest didn't uncover. While Tiye and Pentawere took the fall, other conspirators remained hidden. They waited, they planned, and they struck. The murder is covered up. Ramesses IV, the legitimate heir, takes the throne and rules as if his father died naturally. The records are altered, the witnesses silenced or eliminated. History is rewritten. This is the ultimate truth of the harem. It wasn't destroyed by its excesses or its luxuries. It was destroyed by its very nature. When you create a system where women's only value is their connection to one man, where children's only future depends on eliminating their siblings, where love itself becomes a weapon, you create not a paradise, but a powder keg. And it only takes one spark to burn it all down. Years have passed. Nefertiti, now a priestess of Hathor with silver threading through her hair, stands in the ruins of what was once the Jeneret house. The palace has been abandoned, the harem system officially dissolved. Sand has already begun to reclaim the chambers where hundreds of women once lived, loved, schemed, and died. She's not alone. Beside her stands an archaeologist, a young woman with fire in her eyes and dust in her hair. They've been excavating a recently discovered tomb, KV40, in the Valley of the Kings. What they found there has shaken our understanding of the harem to its core. 50 bodies, women and children, hastily mummified, thrown into a communal grave with minimal ceremony. Some show signs of violence. Others appear to have died suddenly, all at once, poison most likely. These were the forgotten ones, the collateral damage of the harem conspiracy. Women whose only crime was being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Tell me about them, the archaeologist asks, though of course, this is impossible. Nefertiti has been dead for 3,000 years. This conversation is happening only in the imagination, a bridge between past and present. But sometimes imagination is the only way to reach truth. If Nefertiti could speak, what would she say? She'd tell you that among those 50 bodies was Jeneret, the woman who waited 7 years for a summons that never came. She was executed not because she was part of the conspiracy, but because she might have overheard something. Better safe than sorry, the new administration decided. She'd point to the small skeleton of Prince Amenhotep, the 7-year-old who accused Queen Tiye of planning his mother's murder. He didn't survive the week, as predicted. The official cause was a scorpion bite. The unofficial cause was being too dangerous to live. She'd show you the remains of the 3 Nubian dancers, the ones everyone suspected were spies. Ironically, the investigation proved they were exactly what they claimed, just dancers. But by then, it was too late. The wheels of judgment, once set in motion, rarely stop for something as inconvenient as innocence. This mass grave tells the real story of the harem, the one that doesn't appear in the official records or the romantic paintings. It wasn't a paradise of pleasure or even a simple prison. It was a factory of broken dreams where women were raw materials and royal children were products, where love was currency and death was always one whispered accusation away. But here's the most tragic part. The system didn't die with Ramesses III. It evolved, adapted, continued in different forms for another 1,000 years. The Ptolemaic dynasty had their own version. Cleopatra herself was a product of generations of royal incest and harem politics. The human capacity to create golden cages for one another seems infinite. Modern excavations have revealed more secrets, letters never sent, hidden in wall cracks, expressing longings that break your heart across millennia. I dream of birds, one writes. They fly home, I cannot. Jewelry buried with bodies, inscribed with names we'll never fully know. people who existed only as footnotes in someone else's story. There's evidence of resistance too. Women who formed secret societies within the harem, supporting each other against the system, teaching each other to read when it was forbidden, sharing contraceptive knowledge to avoid pregnancies that would make them targets, small acts of rebellion that kept humanity alive in an inhuman system. The cosmetics that slowly poisoned them? Recent analysis shows some women knew. They knew the lead was toxic, knew the mercury was deadly, but they used them anyway. Because in the harem, looking old or ugly was a death sentence, just as sure as poison, only slower. They chose the devil they knew. And what of love? Did it exist in this environment of calculation and conspiracy? The answer is yes, but not in the way stories usually tell it. Love existed between the forgotten women who comforted each other through endless empty nights, between the mothers who formed alliances to protect each other's children, between the servants and their mistresses who risked everything to warn each other of danger. Rarely, very rarely, there was even love between a pharaoh and a concubine, but these stories usually ended tragically. Love made you vulnerable in the harem. It gave your enemies a weapon to use against you. The successful survivors were those who learned to live without it. As we stand in these ruins, looking at these bones, reading these fragments of lives lived in golden captivity, what lessons do we take? That power corrupts? That luxury can be its own prison? That systems designed to control women ultimately destroy everyone they touch? All true, but there's something more. The real lesson of the harem is about the stories we don't tell. For 3,000 years, these women were reduced to exotic decorations in someone else's narrative. The dancing girls in the background of Hollywood epics, the nameless beauties in the pharaoh's bed, their intelligence, their struggles, their humanity, all erased in favor of male fantasy. But now, through archaeology and technology, their voices are emerging from the sand. We're learning that they were mathematicians and musicians, poets and politicians. They were survivors in an impossible system, making choices between terrible options, fighting for their children with the only weapons they had. They were, in other words, human, complex, flawed, struggling humans trapped in a system that saw them as property. Their tragedy wasn't that they were concubines, it was that we forgot they were people. So the next time you see those serene faces painted on Egyptian tomb walls, those beautiful women with their elaborate wigs and perfect makeup, remember what lies beneath. Remember the lead poisoning and the loneliness. Remember the mothers who died protecting their children and the daughters sold for political alliance. Remember the dancers who kept performing even as their world collapsed around them. Remember Nefertiti, who survived by leaving everything behind. Remember Takhat, who was murdered for the crime of having a successful son. Remember Gilukepa, who would never see Mitanni again. Remember the 50 women in KV-40, whose names we'll never know. They deserve that much. They deserve to be remembered not as exotic fantasies or historical curiosities, but as what they were, women trying to survive in a world that gave them no good choices. Women whose lives were crushed between the millstones of power and politics. Women whose stories were written in poison and gold, in dance and death, in beauty and terror. This was a day in the life of a pharaoh's concubine, but it was also a life sentence, a death sentence, and occasionally, for the very lucky few, a chance at something approaching freedom. The sun sets now over the ruins of the Jeneret house, painting the ancient stones the color of old blood. The tourists have gone home. The archaeologists have packed up their tools. Only the wind remains, whispering through chambers that once echoed with music and screams, with laughter and conspiracy, with the sounds of lives lived in the shadow of gods and kings. Somewhere in that wind, if you listen carefully, you might hear them still, the forgotten women of the Pharaoh's harem, not asking for pity or even understanding, just asking to be remembered as they were, not as we imagined them to be. They were prisoners in paradise, powerful in their powerlessness, dead long before they died. They were the price Egypt paid for its glory, the human cost of divine kingship, the sacrifices offered on the altar of dynasty. They were concubines, they were mothers, they were dancers, musicians, teachers, spies, and sometimes they were revolutionaries. They were the women who lived and died in the golden cage, and their stories, finally, after 3 millennia of silence, are being told. And that, perhaps, is the only justice history can offer, the chance to be remembered truly, without romance or revision, without fantasy or forget. Just the truth, terrible and beautiful as it is, preserved like their mummified remains, waiting for someone to finally see them as they really were. Human beings, nothing more, but certainly nothing less.